Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
All right, guys. Well, ooh, that's way too loud. Let's bring that down. Thursday, so we do have some numbers coming up here. And the market is kind of looking a little on edge. Like they've been moving around here. Now, did I miss? Was there a number here a little bit earlier? Oh, well, we have ECB. That's what we got going on. ECB rate statement. About 15 minutes ago, the treasury markets have moved a little bit higher, but we are going to get initial jobless claims and PPI here. In about a minute, you can see the liquidity on the treasuries kind of pulling here. So I think what we're going to do is, well, you know, I should have been here earlier, but we'll go through the charts and kind of get our bearings about which markets are doing what after the PPI. And I don't know about these headphones. The material on them is super soft and really comfortable, but they're really close to my ears, and I do feel stuff touching my ears, and it kind of bothers the ears after a while. But when I put them on, it just is like so plush. I like that. Okay, here we go. Ooh, okay. Core PPI month over month, spot 3 versus spot 2. I think that that's a sell. They rose first, but then flipped around. The headline PPI month over month was spot 2 versus spot 1 as well. Well, I'm thinking we might be able to get lows again. Let's see. The moment they're having a hard time getting the volume to extend below 08, but there is a big order there at 05 half. Very interesting. Oh, good morning, Namrus, Apol, Rob, Robert, Uzi. Welcome to the stream. This is, So I don't know if this is like, okay, maybe that's a problem. Or if this is like, hey, let's scalp this area and try and build our cost basis up, because eventually it's going to break down lower. So I didn't mention it, but the initial jobless claims was 230 versus the expectation of 227 and a previous reading of 227. So we didn't get a whole lot there on the PPI. It was very interesting to me. Why did they buy? Why was there such a huge spike higher buying? Was it just because the structure of the market going into that kind of left over by the ECB decision? Or am I missing something in there, that there was something that was, you know, would cause buying, and then, because that is really quite bizarre. And then not only that, but they come back to basically where they were from before the news, and then they have a hard time extending below that. I'm not gonna say that they don't have like I'm not actually seeing the sell orders come in aggressively. Like even those last 3 ticks, we just came to the low. The biggest take there was 2,800, and then it was 69 at 08 half, right? So I'm not actually seeing a huge imbalance in the market orders yet. But what's happening is the limit orders are like super reluctant to take on offers, but they are kind of holding bids. I'm not saying that like it would be hard to get over this, but it will require the sellers to cross over and hit into these bids. And so far it's not happening. I think that it will eventually come, and when once you break, you might, the trickle turns into a waterfall and yada yada. But let's see what happens. So my thinking when I was getting into this though was, okay, it was higher than expected. Market seems to be going the wrong way. So let's try and take a trade and take advantage of it. Kind of a weird flow so far though. Okay, so there's a little bit into 06 half. I don't really see that big bid that we had down there earlier either, by the way. Really fast. See, actually there was actually some strong delta on that, so that's gonna scare me out. You say the 2-year delta is dumping hard? It wasn't a ton, but I mean, we bought up there really quickly. Oh, you know what? I'm just thinking, did I put my garbage out because it's garbage day? And I just heard a weird sound. I'm going to go check real quick. I think my son put him out when they came home last night. Man, okay, it is really gapping up there, isn't it? Is it because they think that the ECB doing 25 basis point cut is a bigger flow? You know, that's one that I kind of wish I understood better. Is, okay, if the Federal Reserve comes, or the ECB comes in, and is widely anticipated to do a cut, and then they come in and they do the cuts, and then you get a big move anyways. And like, okay, I think that a lot of the action that you get is because, you know, they have press conferences and there's the statement and all of this stuff. So you get a lot of action that is maybe even mostly endogenous in nature because, you know, people expect it to move and traders are going to trade. But it kind of seems to me that even if there wasn't a statement, even if there wasn't a press conference, that they would still move. And that there are people out there that have to put orders in. And don't think I completely understand why or what they're doing. It's reacting to the jobless numbers, maybe. Employment data seems to be one thing that makes the market shift. Well, so that could be as well, but the unemployment numbers were pretty much in line with expectations as well. So I think that PPI being slightly higher than anticipated is the biggest divergence from expectations that we got here this morning, but it is not driving the action. Now, there was a huge spike up on the news release, so you would think there's got to be something in the news release that caused the robots to buy. But what was it? PPI year over year was in line with expectation. PPI month over month slightly higher than expected. Core PPI year over year in line 2.4, 2.4. Core PPI month over month spot 3 versus spot 2. Jobless claims 230 versus 227, so 3,000 is not very big. Continued jobless claims in line with expectations, and Canadian building permits month over month much higher than expected at 22.1% versus an expected 6.6. Unless we're still looking at a flight to yeah, well, the S&P 500 definitely took a dive. Oh, that's got to be it. No, that's got to be it. Oh, that's so interesting if that's what it is. I don't know if I've ever seen it like that before. That it's like inflation is higher than anticipated, and that means that interest rates are going to be higher for longer, and that's bad for risk assets. And so the S&P 500 sells off, but then the treasuries don't sell off like they should based on the inflation data, but rather they buy because of the risk off tone in the equities. But that is kind of what we saw yesterday too, wasn't it? In fact, now but I was really unsure during the stream, but then by the end of the day, I was absolutely positive, because you would look at the S&P 500 in the treasuries, and there was a pretty clear anti-correlation there, that when the S&P 500 was falling, the treasuries were buying, and then when the S&P 500 recovered those losses, the treasuries started going back down towards the lows of the day. So I think that might be right, that it is a risk off of flow. Still, not only have I never seen it play out that way, but I've never seen such strong flows come into the treasuries in that kind of a situation, Like, I've seen really strong flows come in when it was like, we're going to buy the treasuries first, and then we're going to turn around and sell the S&P 500, right? That sort of a thing. They're sneaky about it too. But this one where, like, it just seems like they're trading correlations. I don't know if I've ever seen that. Okay, well, on the trade itself, though, I think that I did okay, right? Like, I had a good thesis for a trade. I was able to execute it fairly quickly, and I got a decent spot. There was some favorable excursion, and then I was able to see that it wasn't working and hightail it out of there at a scratch. So that's good. Now that it's a little bit higher and they're actually kind of buffeting up against that stop out zone at 14.5 and slowing down, I'm kind of thinking about, well, maybe this is where it comes back. But if I'm going to take a short here, I don't think that I'm looking for it to go to the lows anymore. I think that I'm just looking for it to take advantage of a pullback. And is the pullback really the optimal trade here? I don't think so. I think the better trade here would be either, I think that it will reverse again and it will go down to the lows, which I don't think is going to happen. So I don't think that there's a trade for that. Or maybe there's going to be a trend long here that, they're going to discard the PPI news and just buy through. Well, let's just kind of stand by and see what they do. They are running into a spot. So there was a big iceberg there that got filled at 14. Seems like there's big orders on both sides because now you've got an iceberg at 14. So that could be enough to create a temporary hole. And the hole is coming in at a key spot where our cost basis says that, like, you know, certain market makers are losing money. So I think it's worth noting that spot. Man. Okay. That's just interesting how my mind works. I started browsing a little bit, and one of the stories I saw here on the Daily Wire is, here's why Trump's suggestion that ABC gave Harris's debate questions isn't a conspiracy theory. And when you get into the article, their case is essentially, well, because a politician was given debate questions in the past, that means it's not a conspiracy theory. No, that's not how it works. A conspiracy theory, to me, is an allegation of wrongdoing, conspired between multiple individuals that we have no evidence to support. So do we have any kind of empirical evidence to support that Kamala Harris was given debate questions? It's a plausible theory. Yes, it's a very plausible conspiracy theory. But we don't have any evidence, so it's still a conspiracy theory. That's what I say. I don't know how many people would think of it like me, though. Brad says this is interesting. You're talking about the market action here that we're moving up. Oh no, you have a link. You have a link. Okay. Oh boy. Bill O'Reilly on the debate and his all-time presidential rankings. Well, I'll have to give that a watch later. Thanks for giving me that. I wonder, by the way, have you guys I've been getting weird comments on my YouTube videos that are just like names and totally random stuff. And I feel like I remember seeing something about that some sort of scam involved in it or something. And what is that about? Have you guys seen that? What's that about? Weird comments on videos that are just like names and things like that. Don't seem to have anything to do with the video. Turkey Tom did a video about what, the conspiracy theory, or about the names thing? Who's Turkey Tom? It's a CP scam. Turkey Tom. Oh wow, that's a big YouTube channel. I've never heard of that before. 1.29 million subscribers. He did a video about this yesterday. Well, I don't see a video from him until Sorry, it's his other account, Tom After Dark. Tom After Dark. The Destiny situation is insane. YouTube has a serious problem. Watch that later. Oh wait, did I used the wrong tab? So I want that the Bill O'Reilly one. Watch that later. There we go. Thank you. I'm gonna watch that because I'm sitting here thinking like, well, it's a video engagement, so should I just not care, or should I like aggressively delete the comment? It used to be, man. It used to be that I would get so many spam comments and it would piss me off so much. But YouTube seems to have fixed that because I don't see those anymore. But maybe the spammers just, don't care about me anymore. I'm interested to see what Bill O'Reilly will have to say. I'm guessing that it might be what a lot of conservative commentators were saying. I think they kind of came down a little bit different from me, but in a similar vein. But the thing that I'm seeing people say is, well, the pundits and the political class and all of the people on in the Democrat Party are kind of look at this as like a sparring match. And so they're super excited because they think that Kamala Harris did well against Trump in this sparring match. But when you look at actual voters that are undecided, like the people that actually matter at this point, you see that they didn't really get what they were looking for. And so there were more than one focus groups, where they had undecided voters. And those undecided voters came down in favor of Trump. And it seemed that Trump's closing statement in particular, that Kamala Harris has been vice president for 3 or 4 years, and she hasn't done any of those things. Why isn't she doing those things now? If she says that she's going to change everything. That seemed to resonate with that set of voters very strongly. So some people are saying, well, the impact of the debate may not be what all of the pundits are kind of thinking in the immediate aftermath. And when you get over the longer haul, you'll kind of start to see that actually it was a really good debate for Trump. So let's see. The other thing is that with the whole cat eating thing, like, again, I'm kind of like, I don't think you want to go all in on eating cats, because it seems like the eating cat thing that is based off of is kind of like a piece of misinformation. A lady, not in Springfield, but in that state, was arrested for eating cats, but she wasn't Haitian and wasn't in that place. And there are other people making complaints, but the local authorities aren't confirming any of those complaints. But it kind of seems like whenever I doubt Trump on these sorts of things, that I get humbled. And I think that yesterday I was humbled, because when I was watching, I was pretty focused today at work. When I got off work and I started reading everything, all of this additional information started coming up that was supporting Trump. Yeah, there's a recorded 911 call of someone complaining about them, at the very least popping up. Yes, so and that, this is, okay, here's the thing that's so insane about this, though, is that 911 recording was released just before the debate. So, we didn't know about it at the time of the debate, but it was released just before the debate by just some guy on YouTube. In other words, just a regular citizen journalist went there and said, found this information and found this 911 call and posted it. So in the debate, Donald Trump said that, and ABC was prepared to fact check Donald Trump and say, well, we called the city manager there and he says that nothing's going on. And all Trump can say is, well, of course the city manager doesn't want to admit that that's what's going on because it'll make him look bad, right? That's all the media did, was call the media manager and say, oh, well, it's not true. Instead of like going down to Springfield and starting to interview people to see like what's going on. And now what's happening is people on YouTube and Twitter and citizen journalists are doing that for the media. And you've got all of these people with firsthand accounts talking about the things that they've seen. Like there is a real story going on in Springfield. And the story is not that people are eating cats. But the story is that the people of this community that have lived there for decades, their lives are being completely upended by this mass influx of immigration. That's their story. They have a story to tell, and the media is not covering it at all. And they basically tried to cover it up. And because Trump has gone all in on this cat eating thing, even though there's kind of a little bit of a, there's a little bit of a misinformation to it, it's bringing out the real story. So it was worth it. It was totally worth it. I was 100% wrong. And once you start to realize that, it's really quite infuriating. It's the same thing. They are objectively harming the lives of everyday people to support some sort of larger globalist policy. This is why Donald Trump's doing so well. You remember the days when the whole thing was the media sensationalizing things, like if it bleeds, it leads, right? Doesn't it feel like the media has flipped now and they're gaslighting people about sensational things that they're experiencing? Well, so here's what it really... I think that there's a better way to explain or describe what's going on. The media have basically become... what do you call it when you're like a historical person and your job is just to like record what happened? It's not like a cartographer, but it's like a word that kind of sounds like that. Anyways, they don't do actual journalism anymore. All they do is write down and report what government officials tell them. And that's like all the mainstream media does anymore. They hardly do any of their own reporting. Like, if there's something going on, like there's a flood or whatever, right? They'll send a correspondent down there. But why is the correspondent down there? So that they can have video of them standing in the stream with the, up to their knees in the water. But everything that person tells you is going to be the stuff that like the local authorities have told them. And maybe a personal interest. They're not journalists. And that's what's really going on. That's what's really going on. Yeah. Experiencing a massive inflation? No, you're not. Experiencing a crushing influence of migrants on your small town's resources? No, you're not. Victim of a crime in an area that's overrun by crime? No, you're not. And then when you just can't hide it anymore, they start contextualizing how your suffering is actually good. Yeah. It's, so I tell you what, so here's another thing. That, oh man, I really, this really bothers me. Okay. It's like, I have run into a cognitive dissonance of sorts that really, really bothers me yesterday. Okay. That video with explain what's behind in the media. Well, yeah, I mean, I could explain it, but the gist of it is that they benefit so much from their relationships with governments that they have a really strong incentive to just do what the government says, when that was not always the case before. But I digress. So the thing that I ran into on TikTok, there was this video where a guy brought up the point in the debate where, you know, they fact checked Donald Trump again, and they said, actually, crime is decreasing. And Donald Trump said, well, that's not true, because the numbers are only going down because you're not reporting it. And so then this guy on TikTok, he showed that. And then he showed a map and all of this other stuff that he had posted on TikTok before, that was basically like, every dot on here is a municipality that did not submit statistics for the FBI crime reports. Like, since this time, they have stopped reporting the statistics. And it was like a third of principalities, and it was like the biggest ones too. So it really was like, oh, the reason why you're seeing the statistics go down and so forth is because they're not reporting it. And he just showed the data. He just showed the data. And it's like, oh, how come you've never seen anybody on NBC to say that? Well, because the people in the government, they don't want you to see that, right? And he went on to this other point, which was, well, you know, all of us here on TikTok, we've known this for like 6 months. Like, the people that are arguing this in the debate and are now kind of like finding this information out after the debate, they're like 6 months behind. He was absolutely right. And then he said, you see, this is why they want to ban TikTok, because they don't want people to have that independent voice. And it was like, it made me twitch. Because I'm like, yeah, but it's also like Chinese propaganda, right? Like, I really think that China puts their thumb on the scale on TikTok and decides what's going to blow up and what's not going to blow up. And they intentionally boost content that kind of makes people dissatisfied and or makes the government look bad. So, but then on the other side of it, I also kind of realized, oh, okay, the innovation of TikTok is not just the algorithm. I mean, that was the thing that always stood out to me, and obviously it would, because I'm into the algorithms anyways, right? I thought, hey, the fact that I just come in and I start scrolling, and based on how much I watch these videos and things like that, determines what I like to see, and it does a better job at finding me content than I do on my own trying to browse around and find things on YouTube, is absolutely amazing. And that's what I thought was the big innovation in TikTok. But it's not. The big innovation in TikTok is that it makes it so dead simple for anybody to go and make content. And yet, that easy content is hard to fake. It's like, if you went and you made a video of some, you know, AI saying something and, you know, to try and, it doesn't make sense. Like, people would be able to tell that it's an AI, and it would just be easier to get an actor and have a person make a video. On the split side, text, anybody can fake that. You can go and you can post stuff on Reddit, on Facebook, in YouTube comments, whatever the deal is, it's text. You can say whatever you want, and nobody can verify any of it. They can't verify who you are. They can't verify what you're saying, whatever. But if you go and you make a video, at least they know, like, okay, that's a real person. This is what this real person looks like, and this is what they're saying. And all of a sudden, it lends this other side of credibility. So it's actually like one of these problems that has been bothering me so much, that especially on Reddit, how much of the activity there is actually real. You can't really verify any of it. Well, creators on TikTok is at least one way where they've overcome that. And I think live streaming is another one. You can get on a live stream and people can talk, and now we can have those interactions that we want to have on the internet that it seems like the robots are ruining. And that is maybe actually the more powerful aspect of TikTok. I guess the good news about that is that TikTok does not have a monopoly on that, right? So people can do that with YouTube Shorts. People can do that with Instagram Reels. So if they ban TikTok, or we can still have that. But it really made me think about my approach. It really made me think like, I probably do need to make more YouTube Shorts and talk about these things more often, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, you guys are having a different discussion over here. What is this? It's because the news is more for people like you who are greater than 90% immune to stuff like that. I've got so many friends who I call immune to price volatility and bad policy. Maybe. I don't think that let's call them the poors, jokingly, okay? But I don't want to be insensitive to people that are struggling in this country. But those people tend not to watch the news. But I actually think it's kind of a weird thing with this, because it used to be that if you were a middle class family, you would tune into the nightly news. You would turn the TV on at 5 o'clock and you would select from one of the 3 to 4 major news stations in your area and watch their news program, and they all had one, right? So we have 4 local television stations all doing the same kind of program at the same time. That must mean that there's real demand for it, right? Well, there was. And then cable TV came along and the internet came along and people stopped watching that stuff, right? And then you're left with the national news. And the national news, I kind of feel, is more upper class and upper middle class people. Because those people have a more direct monetary incentive to try and understand what's going on in the world, right? So it is the political class that watch that. I think so. So do they make content to appeal to that upper class group of people? Potentially. But I personally don't think that that's what's the main thing that's driving them. I think that the main thing that's driving them is that they're doing what gives them the most direct incentives, and that is play nice with the government, because the government is like your best source of information and gives you the most stuff and the content that brings people in. So they're it's just like the Joe Biden thing. Like, everybody in the media knew what was going on. These people in the White House press pool, they knew what was going on. Some of them were saying it, but you're not going to go out and like really directly start to say, listen, I'm in the press corps and I know that that Joe Biden is not healthy. You wouldn't say that. Why would you not say that? Because then they'll cut you out of the press pool and then you won't get anything. So they couldn't say, and this was something that started under Obama. We kind of warned about it when it started to happen, and you can see where the media has gone. Once the government starts punishing reporters for reporting, then the reporters only have an incentive to report what the government wants, and then it's not real news anymore. It's fake news. This is something with we're talking about context. If you're a left-leaning person, you probably already left the stream. But if you're a left-leaning person and you're still listening, this is a key piece of context that I think a lot of people on the left miss. When people on the right talk about fake news, they're not just saying, oh, those are stories that are untrue or that are made up or anything like that. No, it's a description for the media as a whole, that the media does not report what would be in our best interests to be reported. That's why, because we as people think that the purpose of the news is to inform us on events in the world that could potentially be important to our lives, right? So if they're not doing that, then it's fake news, right? It's actually just propaganda. That's what people on the right mean when they start talking about it. It's fake news, but it's a much broader term. So people in your position are easier to convince that bad things aren't happening? Well, if I was only watching the mainstream, if I was only watching CNN, then maybe it would be. But I'm on the, I'm watching on the internet, right? So we see all of these things. There's still this other issue, which is like there's a lot of things that are claimed that seem awfully extravagant to me and that nobody has any direct evidence for. So that's a different issue. But like, for instance, with the immigration thing, we've been talking about this here on our streams from the very beginning. We said, Joe Biden's going to open the border. You're going to see millions of people pour through. And you have. And we've been talking about the impacts that it's had on these communities the whole past 4 years. And it's been talked about on the internet. People know. Well, not everybody knows, but people know. And not because of the mainstream media. I couldn't imagine how bad New York and California really are. Illinois is actually bad. They stopped reporting crimes a while back almost entirely. Well, there are some areas of the country where it's, I tell you what, man. One of the things that I learned as a missionary, one of the most striking things to me, was that you could have some of the richest people you've ever seen, and then literally the next block over the poorest people that you've ever seen. Like, every rich community has its own little mejito for the workers. It's disgusting to me. When I always saw that, it was always disgusting to me. Because one of the things I did on my mission was there was an odd number of Spanish-speaking missionaries. So I was with the Spanish-speaking missionary for like a month. And the Spanish-speaking missionaries do so well that, like, basically everything that you do is Spanish. So it's you're just sitting there listening to people speak a language that you don't understand for 6 weeks. Okay. And it happened to where we were placed happened to be a very, very rich area. That county has like the lowest tax burden in the United States. So a lot of very rich people move there as a tax shelter and build their homes. So the people that, we're talking about like $1 million homes that today would be worth $1 million as far as you can see. Crazy. It's not just crazy rich, but like big area that's also crazy rich. And then there would be this little rundown apartment complex where all of the Mexicans lived, and that's where we spent all of our time. It was disgusting. So you can have and this happens in Chicago too. So like you can have areas that are like really, really run down, and then other areas in the city that are super nice. And the people in the super nice areas might have no clue what's going on in the rundown areas. Absolutely. That's the thing. It's not just blue cities. The big blue city made the rest stop too. I am in the most southern point of Illinois, furthest from, and we're not allowed to report. Even our school boards for a couple of local communities were appointed by people from Chicago. You don't like your school board? Oh boy. Well, these are some of the reasons why I generally do not believe in our democracy. Well, here's the thing. Man, this is a subject that like I think a lot about, but I don't like to talk a lot about because people don't like to hear it. But I think that you guys can handle it, okay? There's a lot of things in our world that work the way that they do for reasons, and usually those reasons is that it's effective, that it makes money, that the alternatives don't work very well. And in cases where those things are not what people would naturally want, or naturally think should be going on, we give them little white lies. When I say we, I mean society at large kind of gives them little white lies. So I think that the biggest white lie of that nature is that we're a democracy. I mean, a lot of people on the conservative side, they understand that we're not. We're not a democracy, we're a republic. And not only are we a republic, but we're a constitutional republic, which is to say that we have checks and balances against these, So, yeah. What happens, the decisions, the laws that are enacted and everything, are not what the majority of people want. Because we have found that what the majority of people want, if it's like a narrow majority still, it can often be very negative and bad for the country and the society at large. So we created a bunch of checks and balances to kind of, stop that. There's another side to this, which is that money holds a lot of political power. It does. People will say, well, we need to get all of the money out of politics. And the way that we do that is like, we have to have a constitutional amendment to prevent people from having super PACs and things like that. I know the super PAC thing is super crazy because like the court case that caused all this was somebody released a video before the election. They weren't associated with the presidential campaign in any way, but it did kind of help one campaign over the other because it was a message that was objectively Republican. And so they said that's an in-kind contribution to the campaign. And then the Supreme Court said, no, that's ridiculous. If somebody is allowed to come in and have a voice and release a movie or talk on television or whatever the deal is, regardless of whether it helps one campaign or the other campaign, right? And then this morphed into, okay, money is speech, and so you can't prevent them from spending the money. Okay, so maybe that is true. But then what they did was they said, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a special kind of nonprofit group called the 503c that allows people to make political contributions tax-free, and none of it has to be reported. And they're totally fine to do all of that as long as they're not directly interacting with the campaign. Like, they didn't have to make that. That was ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That shouldn't exist. Okay, but if you get rid of that, does that restore democracy? No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because the reality is that the money speaks for a reason, right? The money represents the largest portions of the economy, and the portions of the economy that are being the most productive and are making stuff. And in our American system, those people have a larger voice than the rest of us. Yes, they do. And because they do, we see more economic growth because of it. So it's not something, it's a very uncomfortable thing to say, because I'm sitting here and I'm saying, yeah, actually, it kind of is beneficial to the nation as a whole that the money speaks. Because if the money didn't speak, if the money had absolutely no influence at all, then people would just go and destroy anything that makes money, and we would, we'd be in. That's what happens in a lot of countries, frankly. There's a lot of these countries that, like, they're poor areas. They don't really have much of an economy to speak of, and they just continually, they're trying to get their feet off the ground, and they never can. And part of it is because of that. It's like anytime that anybody starts to do well, they just get torn down. That doesn't happen in America. And that's part of why our nation has done as well as it has. But obviously, there are things that corporations and people with money are doing and are influencing to happen in our nation that are objectively bad and harmful for everybody else. Like inflation. The politicians, they knew what they were doing. They knew that there was a good chance that it would cause inflation. They didn't care because they were going to get elected, right? There are supposed to be checks and balances. The real issue is that our check on corporations is that they are public companies. So we, the people, own them collectively. We have shares. We can vote. And if they're doing something that we think is really harmful to the nation as a whole, we can vote to that board out. We can vote to change things, right? That's what's broken, guys. Our checks, the checks that the people have to check the politicians and to check the corporations, those are broken. What is our check on the politicians? It's the media. And the media are literally playing and allying themselves with individual politicians. Absolutely ridiculous. So now, the one entity out there that's supposed to be calling out government corruption and problems in government and so forth, and they don't do their job. Right? You want to fix problems. So if you want to fix problems in the United States, you got to understand where the problems really actually lie. And that kind of involves having a better than surface understanding. I'm not going to say that I'm like a super expert or anything, but you need a better than surface understanding of the actual structures that we're talking about, right? Do you see how once you understand the structures and the structures of power and how money is involved in that and everything, how the biggest problem that we have is the checks that we get through the media and through ownership of public companies are probably the two biggest ones. Nobody wants to talk about owning stocks. Nobody wants to own stocks. Now you just need to put it all in an index fund. Cool. We've outsourced our greatest source of power. The middle class outsourced their greatest source of power by giving all of their money to index funds. It's so ironic because it's like, oh yeah, now we can invest for our retirement and, you know, be independent like this and get the best return without having to do anything. Yeah, but at the expense of any power that owning those shares actually gave you. Now you don't have a seat at the boardroom, and you can't actually use that money to help you now. You have to wait until you're over 65. 401k. It's a scam. It's a scam. It's a ball and chain to the middle class to prevent them from having any influence on anything anymore. Without individual stocks in, well, I mean, if there were no individual stocks, how would you have index funds? I don't understand what you mean by that. So, the larger point that I'm trying to make, though, is what people do is they say, this is the way that I think democracy is supposed to work, or this is how I was told democracy is supposed to work. And then I see that it doesn't actually work that way. That means that there's no point in doing anything. No, that's not what it is. You have to understand it as a complex set of systems with many people involved. And if the system doesn't work very well, the way that you fix it is you do your little part in the system and make your little part better. It's a problem that not very many conservatives go into to work for the government, for instance. It's kind of weird because like the government employees get paid more than their public sector counterparts right now. But so now you have the machine is all run by one group of people. That's not good. What I mean, like, if the middle class is just pouring money into index funds, who buys the stocks? The index funds buy the stocks. Like, for index funds to increase in value, they need stocks to increase in value. Yes, it's so. Remember, it's all about orders, right? You invest your money into the 401k. The 401k takes that money and equally buys all of the individual stocks with it. Because they're individually buying all of the individual stocks, the stocks have a tendency to go up. This is why you can't really go and look at metrics for valuation of the overall stock market as a whole from like 50 years ago and expect the market today to fit with that at all. Because the biggest flow in the stock market is the index funds just coming in and buying everything across the board. And maybe we get to a point where there are enough boomers retiring. It seems to me like most of the boomers, you're supposed to, like, you know, convert your stocks into bonds over time so that you know, a market event, you know, a market crash at just as you're about to retire doesn't destroy your retirement, right? You want to have some of it in bonds. I think that most of the boomers have done that this kind of scenario where, like, now the distributions are more than the contributions, and so that means there's a flow coming out of the stock market, and that really starts to hurt the performance of the stock market as a whole. It looks like that's not going to happen, and we also got some inflation at the right time to kind of help prevent that from happening. Okay, but that is the biggest flow in the market. The second biggest flow in the market is companies taking on debt and using it to buy back shares. It is. So, like, a way to sap volatility from the market when you think about just forever buying and only selling during retirement waves. Yes. I mean, I don't know if I would look at it from the perspective of volatility. Okay, but yes, the S&P 500 is higher than valuations of the underlying companies would suggest, primarily because all of the money is going into the stocks directly from the index funds. Okay, or like a kind of a roundabout way of describing it coming from another direction. When a stock gets added to the S&P 500, that tends to boost its stock price considerably. So if you can predict which companies are going to be added to the S&P 500 next year, that's a great way to, like, double your money. And why do you see so much buying when they are added to the index? Because all of the index funds have to own that stock now, which means they have to go out and buy it, which causes the price to go up. But yes, if you always have more money coming into the stock market in the form of contributions to 401ks than you have coming out of the stock market in the form of people getting distributions from their 401k, then it should cause more positive growth in the stock market. Yes. That's why I was saying that, like, having the inflation that we did at a key time is kind of a key thing. So who gets hurt the most from inflation? Who gets hurt the most from inflation? People on fixed income. These are people, they've already sold all their stocks. They have everything in their bonds. They're supposed to get a certain amount of yield, right? And they have a certain wad of cash, and they're supposed to get a certain yield. And then the cost of everything goes up, and the money that they had saved away isn't enough anymore. Right? So those people that they still own the stocks and they're going to be converting them into bonds, right? They have a certain amount of cash that they have to sell. That would be a negative draw on the stock market. But because we had inflation, there is now way more money coming in because of that extra inflation that those older people they don't get. You know, and that's how their distributions end up not killing the stock market, because we have overall inflation. kind of devious. But this kind of comes back to this thing that's like, the system would not work if there was not a little bit of inflation. Like that 2% target, I don't know if the target really needs to be 2%, but a lot of people ask, why isn't the inflation target 0%? because the system wouldn't work with zero. That also means, by the way, that means that when your population is contracting, let's say, like we have right now, people aren't having as many kids. Boomers was a bigger generation than the millennials, although millennials right now is bigger, but like there were more boomers born than there were millennials born, right? And less Gen Z, and it's just kind of like an upside down pyramid when they show those charts and everything, right? It's deflationary. It's deflationary. There's less people contributing into there. What do you do when that happens? You're going to have deflation. The stock market's going to go down. That's going to collapse your economy. What do you do about it? You have to print money. You have to print money and keep that 2% target. Otherwise, the system doesn't work. Debt-based economies couldn't exist. Sure. I don't know. That kind of implies that there's another way of running an economy that's not based on debt, that would not be dependent on inflation, and I'm not sure if that's true. Like you music, by the way. Well, don't thank don't thank me. Go to Harris Heller's YouTube channel for Senpai Gaming and go and thank him, because he's the one that made all that stuff. Oh, okay. Maybe you didn't intend to imply that, but like that's why I'm just saying, I kind of, when I said yeah, I was like a little uncomfortable saying that. And the reason I was saying that is because I know there's a lot of people that's their thing, is that they hate the debt-based economy. And, So like when you use the, or let me take it. It is a tism. Is it a tism or is it not? It's because what I'm doing is I'm asking, why did you insert the debt-based part into the sentence? Why didn't you just say, yes, our economies couldn't exist without inflation? The system that we have couldn't. Why was it key to point out that it was debt-based? Was there a risk of somebody misunderstanding what we were talking about, our kind of economy from a different kind of an economy? I don't know, force of habit. You get it. It is a tism. Well, it's not a tism. It's because a person that's autistic would not understand this at all, right? This is the thing that I think is so weird about ADHD in particular. So the person that has autism, they have difficulty building some of those neural networks in their brain that would understand these sorts of things. So a person with autism would not understand why having that extra word in the sentence might or might not matter. Like a person with autism would probably be really confused by the conversation that we're having, right? A person with ADHD can build those networks, but is often lacking a large amount of data because they're not paying attention. So they get really good at building effective networks with less information than other people, right? So that's why I end up being overly sensitive to those sorts of differences. Do you see now why I seem to be sensitive to certain details that other people aren't? In a really bizarre way. It's because I'm used to building a network without these details, but then I got on medication. I can kind of see the full picture, and so my mind is able to find those particular pieces that were like maybe missing or like were like key details, and then they really stick out to me because I realize that particular piece of information could actually like have a really big impact on the network. Right? But I don't think about it that deeply. I can explain it from a intellectual perspective just because I'm like that, but I didn't think all of that. It was just intuitive to me that like, well, intuitively, why did he say debt-based? I would pick up on that in a way that most people wouldn't. Not that it is important, but that's the other thing is I'm probably overly sensitive to it. It doesn't matter. You're right, it doesn't really matter. But I wasn't sure, right? Because I'm ADHD. Whenever I get into that conversation, like that's something that's always lingering in the back of my mind, is that there's a large portion of the people that tend to be my audience and the people that I tend to interact with because they're conservative that don't like the debt-based economy, that think that we should be on a gold standard and that the economy should be something different. So if the economy, right, and the problem with that, if we were to go down that road, is that then the whole conversation that we're having you don't even get that far because there's not enough gold to support an economy of this size. So, I haven't talked about the market here for a bit. We've gotten super, super deep. I have been watching it as it's fallen back down and now they are back to the lows. There was not a lot of change in cumulative delta on this move down. And the correlations on this way down didn't match either. When we bought in the treasuries, we were seeing really big selling in the S&P 500. Now the S&P 500 is even lower, but the treasuries have completely flipped and they're starting to push on the other side. Well, there was a good take already. Like we probably should have already been in a short, right? Like that right there at 06. So like I was thinking, I was like, well, I could take that. That's not like the bigger trade, but like there's a small little piece I could take. But I really don't understand why it's doing what it's doing. Like, man, I don't understand why it jumped up the way that it did. I don't understand why they're hitting back so hard. It must be like stop outs. Like, look at this. You got like, okay. Big rising cumulative delta. It comes back very, very gently. And then all of a sudden, goodish, once they broke the lows. So that's got to be stops. The issue with that is how many stops are there going to be, right? You would think, okay, that's like a flow that's coming in. We should see more of that. No. This is, you want to be short from up here, and then you're getting out down in here. Probably what we will see is, right? If there's more selling. But we don't know why they sold, so I have no way to predict if they're going to sell again. But if this trend continues, you're probably going to see that. So, but it's okay. Like, look, it's coming back. Coming back. So if we really want to sell 06 that badly, we probably get another opportunity to do it. You still want it? I don't. I'm too late. Anyways, yes. Our economy basically would fall apart without inflation. You wouldn't have enough of the asset to back all of the things that we want to do. And then people wouldn't do things because they don't have the capital. And then growth goes slow. People are reluctant to invest. Things stagnate. Like, this is how a Great Depression happens. You have to have a money supply that is dynamic. So the question that really is, how do you manage that dynamic money supply? Well, we have a system. Maybe there's some problems with that system, but it works pretty good. And that system is called the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee. I guess the other thing I'm thinking about while we're having that conversation, though, and the reason why I'm leaning into it so hard is because this is the key thing I'm trying to teach here, right? Everybody comes in and they say, okay, I'm going to trade the stock market. People tend to take two approaches. One approach is that I'm going to do the technical analysis thing. That's actually what most retail day traders try to do. So there must be patterns in the market, and I'm just going to follow those patterns and make money that way. Tends not to work because the market on a short-term basis is incredibly random, okay? And the things that to do to take advantage of those things on a higher time frames, most people can't do. So then you take this other thing, which is, okay, so I'm going to approach things from a fundamentals perspective. Even if you're doing it from day trading, you're going to say, okay, this is what the number was, and this is what they were expecting, and it's higher than what they were expecting, so it should go up or it should go down. Well, that is a flow, and there are some people that trade off of that, but there are other flows going on. And those flows can be way stronger. If an index fund is doing something, that's like all that matters. You can have like, it's like, you know, if you're out in the ocean, you're playing around and you're making a big wave with your hands, right? That's like the news, because that's all of the traders making a decision and pushing you. You got all you out there and you're splashing in the water. It's not going to matter when the tsunami's going to come in, because that's how much bigger the index fund is than anything we do, right? Or like, this is why all of the smart money concept stuff is such nonsense, because you're all trying to say that like there's some pattern and they're trying to do it in this sort of way, and no, because like it doesn't matter what you're doing. The index fund comes, they just buy it. They blow through all of those. When they're really motivated, they just blow through that stuff, man. Uzi, you know what? I've never seen cumulative delta for stocks. Like, not on. Yes, you have. You haven't watched my my order flow for stocks video where I show that I made my own cumulative delta that works on stocks that is more accurate for instruments that have a wide spread. And if you get DX feed, you can put that cumulative delta indicator on your NinjaTrader chart and trade it based off of cumulative delta. It's like what? It's like what? $50 a month? Yeah, it doesn't exist on your E-Trade feed. Yeah. But I mean, what you basically do is you get the DX feed, you pull the chart up on NinjaTrader, and you just submit your trades on E-Trade. And I think, you know, it would cost a little bit more. Maybe we could start doing that. We could start putting more money into stocks. I kind of feel like for me to do that, I would need a little bit of a bigger wad to mess with. But we could start trading on stocks and trading them based off of cumulative. I think that we would probably do better than we do on treasuries. Because when I was doing it for that video, it seemed like that because nobody in the retail world is able to look at that stuff, there was all sorts of stuff going on in the stocks that people were missing. And, you know, like during the situation that I was looking at, I think it was GameStop, but I can't recall. There was a big moving stock that day, and the cumulative delta through it was sell all the way, even though it was going up. So the big buyers were selling into the retail traders, and it was so clear from the delta, and all of the retail traders got suckered. So yeah. Now, if we were going to do that, I think to do that, number one, I'd have to spend the money on the DX feed every month, which is, you know, it's a big change. I think we could afford it, but it's a little bit of a change. I would probably need a bigger wad because I only have like a few thousands in that account. And with stocks, that's not a lot to trade with, right? Like over in futures, I could come in, I can trade like $5-10. It's no big deal. Though I was going to do it in stocks, you know, I'd probably need to be over the 25. I'd probably need to get over to the 25K at the very least, right? And it would also require a different approach because I would have to do, you know, the majority of my research would be around finding the right stock to trade that day, right? That's, I think, the biggest edge in stock trading, and is a really big difference between stock trading and futures trading. Finding a stock that's a good stock to trade that day. That would be a big change. And it would probably consume all of our time and everything that we do. So you really want to go down that path? Because we could if you guys are really into it, but for now, I kind of feel like really good at teaching people the basics. What is the DOM? How does the limit order book work? What are the fundamental properties and behaviors that come off of that? And see them very, very clearly in the treasury, and get people a good start, and then they can go into that more advanced stuff on their own, you know? But if that interests you, that's how you do it. Go to DXFeed and buy it. I mean, I don't need it because I don't day trade stocks, but I'm just surprised it is not common on stock platforms. Yeah. I get what you're saying, yeah. Like it's such a big edge, how can they not have it, right? But that just shows you how far behind the retail trading world is, man. Like, it wasn't even available until a few years ago. And very few people are actually taking advantage of it. Someday, yeah, that's another thing, is what I could do is I could start doing that. I'd make a live stream, make a couple of big trades, and everybody's like, oh wow, I need to have cumulative delta. And then all of a sudden, all of the platforms are adding it, and everybody in retail trading knows what it is and how to use it, and then it doesn't have any edge anymore, right? We could do that. Just I hate the $1 trillion palladium coin idea. Yeah. So the idea there is, okay, we're having some of these issues, like deflation type of issues. So we're just gonna print a ton and do it in like $1 trillion coin. And the idea is like you would print the money so it's there and it would solve that problem, but then you don't actually use it for anything, so you don't get the inflation. But yeah, I think it would be pointless. I don't think it would have the impact. All it would do is, I think, reduce people's confidence in the system. This going back to the white lies thing, right? People's confidence and trust in the system is the most important factor that makes everything in our monetary system work. And that's why the system is willing to tell people these white lies, that the average person, they're not going to understand it because it requires a lot of study and research to get to the point where you can really understand why things are the way that they are. Most people don't care. You just give them the answer that satisfies them and move on, you know? So whatever it takes so that they can trust the system. And I mean, there's problems with that. I think that we're getting to in our society, we're getting to the point where there's problems with that, because now they're kind of realizing like, well, but it's not actually what you told me, so why should I trust your system? Okay, maybe we do need to take a step back and actually explain what's really happening. Right? No, we're not a fractional reserve. The banks just print the money. When you take out debt, that's printing money. Well, there's some real value in understanding the way that this system actually works, though, right? That's another thing that I kind of hit on, right? Like, just think about this, okay? Like, you get paid every month. You're probably everybody except for Uzi, but Uzi, Uzi, he has a business. Whatever it is, how you're paying your bills. Where did that money actually originally get created from? Where did it originate? Well, I suppose you could go and track it if you had some way to like trace an individual dollar. Of course, some of it goes into these bank accounts, and then like $100 goes in and $100 go out. Which $100 went out? You know, they're all the same, so it's fungible, so it doesn't matter, right? But if you could trace it, where would that money eventually come from? It would come from somebody taking out a loan. Money is created by loans. You take out a student loan, money is created. You take out a home loan, money is created. You take out an auto loan, money is created. You spend money on your credit card, money is created. And the only stipulation that they put on your ability to create money is that you have to pay that money back on a certain time frame. That's it. So who has all of the money in the society? People taking the debt. Your company will go and take out debts. They will sell bonds, for instance. Right? And they make money. And that's how they get it. So if you really want to be like the truly, truly rich, you have to be willing to take debt and use that debt to build a business, a successful business. That's the hard part, right? Being able to pay it back on the reasonable time frame. And then you can borrow as much money as you want. Have you ever looked into hidden? Haven't you asked me that before, man-meat? So it is definitely a thing. I believe that there is a hidden Markov model present in the imbalance between bids and offers in the book, but I've never been able to sort it out. You know, put algorithms in there to sort it out. I know that a lot of algorithmic trading firms doing momentum type strategies utilize Markov models to their advantage for those. So it's a big thing, but I have not had the time to go into it much beyond understanding what it is. Oh, it's the first time you've asked. It's come up time to time. So yeah, if you're asking, hey, I heard about this hidden Markov model, it's a thing that I'm thinking about like researching. Yes, you absolutely should. You absolutely should. Finding the coding side of trading, finding the learning. By the way, oh man, I posted this on the Discord, but it was in a place where I think that not a lot of people would notice. I posted it in the Python area. Here, I'll post the link here in YouTube chat. This is literally a researcher took their code, posted it on GitHub. We release LOB Frame, a novel open source code base which presents a renewed way to process large scale limit order book data. This framework integrates all the latest cutting-edge insights from scientific research into a cohesive system. Its strength lies in the comprehensive nature of the implemented pipeline, which includes the data transformation and processing stage, and ultra-fast implementation of the training, validation, and testing steps, as well as the evaluation of the quality of the model's outputs through trading simulations. Moreover, it offers flexibility by accommodating the integration of new models, ensuring adaptability to future advancements in the field. So basically, you want to do machine learning on limit order book data? They've already done all the hardest work for you. So now all you got to do is go in and say, oh, I'm just going to add new features into the model. Like, maybe they don't have cumulative delta in there. You can add cumulative delta. Or other things, ways of aggregating the data together and everything that you've found useful. Turn it into a feature. Add it into the pipeline. See how it affects the model. It is, when I saw this, I haven't had the time to use it and everything. But when I saw that posted on LinkedIn, I was like, I could not believe that was out there. It's insane that is out there. So if you're getting into Python, it probably wouldn't be a good starting project with Python, but you know, if you've gotten into Python, you've done a little bit of the machine learning thing and you're starting to feel confident on it, this is one to pick up, I think. I'm really curious to see what is the data that you pass into it. Can I take my data that I'm getting and pipe it in? How hard is it for me to pipe my data into it? How different is their format? But it looks like they have a pretty good thing for you to start with, like, you know, usage. Okay, let's just go through that and try it. Yeah, but the resource like this looks like great. Yeah, this is tremendous. Now, the book, Trading Evolved by Cleanow is kind of like a beginner's guide. So if you don't program or you don't know anything about Python and you want to get into programming in Python, it's probably the best book to start with. I found it that through most of the book that they were covering things that I already knew. And so it wasn't as self. And then I wanted to get into, okay, but like, what are the actual strategies that you're using here? And then the strategies themselves were like too simple. It was, you know, okay. So I understand now the thing of doing it on a portfolio. I got the code for that. What are some of the more advanced things to do on this? Like reinforcement-based learning techniques. What is where I need to go on next level. I haven't had the time. Will I ever have the time? I don't know, guys. I was, you know, something. I felt different yesterday. I don't know what causes this feeling. You ever listen to certain songs and the songs give you this certain kind of feeling, like it's kind of like low key, almost sad. Things are ending, but then it's also like really positive and hopeful, like you're at the beginning of something new and there's like this tremendous change that's coming, sort of a thing. There's a lot of songs like that. I think a lot of Dusky songs, like the Dusky Ingrid is a Hybrid, I think is like that a lot, right? And I'd been feeling pretty down earlier in the week, like Tuesday. I was like almost, I would say I was almost in a depressed state. And then I moved over to this other state and I don't know why. And so I don't know if it's like a hormone thing in me or what the deal is. But let's just ignore the science. What does it make you feel? It makes you feel like you're at the beginning of something new, like something is about to happen. There's been a change in the universe and I'm about to be pulled in a different direction, you know, which is kind of sad and hopeful too. Well, what have I been thinking about lately? I need to learn more about the strategy of management, like this thing with your tropic level. I've been thinking about it with my job, because I'm a site reliability engineer and I'm realizing site reliability engineering sits at the top of the trophic levels in the engineering stack. So anything that the software engineer does, the testing engineer does, everything that these people are doing lower, they make an improvement, it benefits me. But in order for me to be in that place, I have to understand enough about what these other people are doing to be able to take advantage of those improvements, right? And that's like once you understand that, it's like a strategic thing. So like, where do you actually want to strategically place your SRA team, and where do you want to put them? You don't want to put them like that they're at the bottom of the stack. You want them, even though they're going to be in the code and they're like digging into it, you want them to be at the top of the stack so that they can take advantage of the improvements everywhere else. It's strategic, right? And those are the sorts of strategic understandings now that I'm like, oh, this is how managers make decisions. Now I see. I want to know more about those. So I feel like that's the direction that I'm being pulled. and that I'm being pulled away from, do machine learning in Python. It was like, you had 4 years to do that, Seth. We need to move on. Maybe not. We'll see. The kids are getting better. I don't feel like that I can focus, like after work, I don't think that I can like put headphones on, put on white noise and just study and do my thing. My wife would still be kind of pissed and the kids would still cause problems and everything. So they're not quite to that age, but they're getting there. They're getting there where I can kind of strategically do that. And then I can say, okay, I'm going to spend time doing this. And then I'm going to have time where we're going to do stuff and we're going to actually do stuff. And I'm going to do focused activities with the kids rather than just this kind of open-ended, they're going to run around the house and muck things up and I have to just prevent everything from getting torn apart. Right. So maybe we'll have time to do both. We'll see. And maybe I'm completely wrong and maybe there's some other third thing that's not even on my radar and it's, like day trading. Like I picked it. Obviously I did. Like it requires a great deal of dedication and perseverance to have gone as far in this as I have. But in my mind, it's like it chose me. I kind of feel like it chose me. It was like something said, this is the thing that you're supposed to go into, and you can't know where it's going to lead, but this is where this is where the path start going down that way. That's how I felt it was. Where is it going? Maybe we're starting, well, when I learned all these things about the market, that was like, okay, this is why I'm here. So there's something very important to be known that most people don't know. And you're like literally the only person on the planet for some bizarre reason. Oh, why is it me? Why don't more people talk? I don't get it. Why it's me. But it's me, that I'm the only person that has both the understanding that these things are going on and the interest in it and the ability and resources to share it with the world. So then I thought, okay, that's what it is. And I did that, and I think we did a really good job at it, and I'm really proud of what we've done on the YouTube channel. And now that I've done that, it's kind of like saying, okay, now that you've done that, it's time to, there's actually more steps involved, Seth. There's bigger stuff. Is it bigger stuff? Because I thought, oh, that means we just get to continue to dig deeper and find even more cool things and do algorithms, and maybe we'll make some money off of it. But then lately, I've kind of been feeling like, no, actually, you need to, there's some other things now you gotta do. You need to raise your tropic level even more. Okay. Let's see where it goes. So is that all? Is it fate? Or is it just all in my head? Well, I have good reasons to think that it's just all in my head. But that's always kind of been the thing. Is like, when I needed to go in a certain direction, let's say it was God. When I needed to go in a certain direction, God just made it happen. Like that, it was easy. So I don't have to worry too much about going in the wrong direction, I feel. The world takes care of that part for me. Manmeat says it could be weather changes. It could, yeah, that's actually not a bad theory because it used to be like 100 degrees and now it's like 90 degrees outside. So could be. Well, looking at the time, first of all, we have a whole hour left, so that's good, because I was kind of starting to feel like, oh, this has been a long session, and it would be nice to have another set of subjects to cover. So I'm enjoying myself. There's an hour left, but then the other side I'm looking at this was, okay, that stop out being a bad place to go for a continuation trade. Very, very prescient prediction on my part. In fact, you could have outright reversed it and done okay. In other words, I said that it was going to do this, and it did this. So, still a little bit thrown off by what the market has been doing, why it's going the way that it has. But this, to me, right here, we broke the lows, and then you really saw the selling come in. Suggests to me that it is endogenous. And if it is endogenous, that probably means that we don't have enough information about the underlying conditions, like what different people's positions are and which flows those are and how those will be affected by certain things, to be able to predict those endogenous flows. And as soon as I say that, we get another big sell, huh? 3K at 07.5. Raymond asked, do you need a hug? No, I don't. I think I'm okay. When I was having the I think one of the things that I think will make me feel depressed, quote unquote. To me, depressed is like I feel sad, almost feel like maybe even crying, and then afterwards, like, why was I so sad? Seems like such a minor thing, and seems like such a small deal. So one of the things that will get me into that mood is not eating on time. You know, like if I'm supposed to have dinner at 7 o'clock and we don't eat until 9, and my body goes into that mode. There's no energy and it just shuts down. And so I think that's what was going on Monday, Tuesday. And then my wife let me be Little Spoon, and I feel like I'm getting over the sickness. No, I think we're good. Still have some concerns about some things going on. Still nervous about things going on at work. I've done a lot of good work this week, and now I'm kind of looking at like, what is the next set of tasks that I pick up?
Sell.
And I don't think that there's a good answer, and that kind of makes me question some things about the amount of opportunity. Man, okay, so the big order at 07.5 is something that makes me kind of nervous to get involved in the market. But then we saw that additional flow come out at 07 and 06.5. It's a risky play. And it's usually best to wait a little bit on those. But I am starting to come around to that we might be able to get involved here. That was some selling. It sure does look like that there's a possibility they want to go lower. I'm thinking about it because if I take it on the live account, one of the issues with the live account is I really want to reduce my unfavorable excursion and really get a trend. And so I'm kind of sitting here like, well, if they come back to that 07.5, I might be able to get like 5 to 10 ticks better. If I'm doing it in the full treasury, like right here, right, I can take multiple contracts and kind of think around with it and not have to worry as much about that. So basically I'm saying that like I kind of want to trade my live account, but I'm not sure that it's the best situation to pull that out. So let's do a little bit here on a sim. and test the waters a little bit. So there's 665. So my impression about that 67 being a bad spot was correct. I am getting filled on my offer at 07.5, which is a little surprising to me. So there might be more of a pullback here than I was anticipating. So what I'm noticing here at 07 and 07.5 is that there's been several points where it's been 2000 by 2000. So the pressure being equal there, which is actually a relatively rare situation. Should I read that as the big players they just finished and now it's equal? I don't know. Okay. So I got a fill there at 06.5, and I just want to note, you know, I was like 333 in line, and I had at one point 4,000 contracts behind me. They had to clear it to fill me. So that's a little bit of a warning to me. That says that the latent liquidity in this location is not very good. So I do have to be careful, like especially if I was going for a reversal. Very, very dangerous spot for a reversal. I might be able to take like as she goes, but like if she doesn't go right then, I probably don't want to hold it because they could pull it back on me 3 to 4 ticks very easily. The latent liquidity kind of suggests that they can play those tricks on you right now. You would cover at 05? Why 05? You don't think that they'll make the lows again? Well, you might be right. I think on the sim trade that I accomplished what I wanted to with my entry. So it is, I do have to think about the exit, and the possibility that they come short of the lows is definitely there. So I think that I can play it by ear, but I'm gonna have to be vigilant. They come down in there because you're right. It might change at 05, and I might not get a whole lot of opportunities to get out. Oh, you're just looking at the delta differences. Interesting. Ooh, that was a big down tick, wasn't it? Like they were starting to like build up at 05.5 and then they just shoot. So that was probably a correlation though. So you're saying you think that there's guys short at 05 and that they're gonna buy and scratch it? I don't know. We've gotten a number of pretty big impulses short here, though. So that to me is indicative not just of a large meta order, but a large meta order driven by guys that are a little stressed out, you know. So that is something with the potential to really run. So I would just kind of have to play it by ear, you know. Like I would like to continue seeing relatively large amounts of order flow coming in, market selling below 05. And I would, and I would like to see the Japanese yen continue to fall here. So the Japanese yen is coming to a key pivot. Dollar's not moving. The S&P 500 is coming up really strongly. So I think the S&P 500 rallying here kind of helps too. Gold is actually relatively high at the moment, but is maybe turning around. I wonder if a sell in gold makes sense here. 25.71. Let's call it 25.72. Okay, well, let's just remember, I never got 665, but I could have gotten 67 in the micros, so that would be $10 right there. Okay. So there's that first backtick. That's always kind of your first warning sign. We didn't see a big distribution of volume down there, though. And these other correlations, well, the Japanese yen may be paused. We gotta keep a close eye on the yen. Because if the yen bounces here, that could cause the treasury to bounce. Okay. Well, I would say that seeing 1,500 a tick net selling down here into the lows, that's still pretty good. I have to see, you know, like to take out that 03 half, for instance, it's probably going to take more than that. So we'll see how aggressive they are about it. Still really wonder though, like the buy, like if that last touch of the lows was people being stopped out, why did they all buy and then get stopped out in the first place? Because if they're getting stopped out now, then it kind of makes their trade seem a little foolish. But like we couldn't figure out why it was doing what it was doing in the first place. Well, I suppose a certain portion of the volume would have to be people just getting caught, not the meta orders that really drove it. You got icebergs on both sides at 04 and 04 half, so that's the second kind of tea leaf that this is an area of distribution. Even though we're getting decent amounts of selling, but it's not super strong. Like it's not really continuing through, right? It's kind of doing that. Like I would have made my $10 and then like just barely kissed it, and if you hadn't have had my limit order in there, I wouldn't have gotten filled. So my earlier comment about I got to be vigilant about the area that I pick, I think that that's still in play. Liquidity pretty equal there. Okay. 5K at 04. Some nibbling at 03.5. Low latent liquidity on the offer at 04. Recovering. Yen starting to lurch lower again. S&P 500 still rallying. Maybe some flattening coming in, so we need to keep an eye on this 5-year. Yeah, in fact it is. This is like the 5-year lurched lower there, and the bids pulled in Yen, but they weren't quite ready to do it because the 5-year didn't go. Okay, and now that liquidity at 04.5 seems to be recovering a little bit more quickly. Not in correlation with anything in the Japanese yen, by the way. I think what I will do is put a stop limit right here at 05. I want to try and hold on to it as long as I can, but I don't want to screw up if they blast back up through 05. So that should allow me to relax a little bit, because I feel like sometimes you get too focused on it, you can make mistakes. Jim Iorio, to say that the Trump administration was just as reckless with spending as the Biden administration suggests a severe lack of understanding of economics, or perhaps a sworn loyalty to a particular ideology. They were not the same. I don't know if I agree with that. I do not feel that responsible spending and balancing the budget is a super high priority in a Trump administration. Could argue about whether it should or it shouldn't be, but I really don't think that it's a high priority for him. Eric Wallerstein, the ECB not only cut by 25 basis points, they also preemptively readied QE by cutting the lending rate by 60 basis points. Meanwhile, the ECB trimmed its growth outlook by 0.1 points for this year and next and raised their underlying inflation forecast by the same amount. Will they ever reach 2%? Well, I don't know why I haven't thought that, oh my gosh, Financial Juice crashed on me there. You leave the tab and come back to it, it crashes. I don't know why I didn't think about the press conference at all. How much of that was the press conference? Perhaps. 45. I mean, it's all been selling since the press conference. I don't know. Doesn't completely fit. So. Another season of shutdown theater is upon us, and Republicans are already cucking out. Thomas Massey, I refuse to be a thespian in the Speaker's failure theater. I really think with this budget fight that that conservatives should kick it down to after the election, because you're not going to get anything. The balance of power in Congress and everything, you're not going to get anything. So all it's going to be is theater and pushing, and you're either going to cause a lot of chaos, or you're going to give up after a while. So they might want to play that game because it looks good to their constituents. In this situation, I don't think it's worth it. I really think you should just kick it. Do that just after the election, when you can kind of take the reins and actually do something. Maybe actually get something, or at the very least set the stage for the next 4 years. You know? Okay, so that time the 5-year stepped up. So this is a more likely to be kind of like the next step lower that I've been looking for. See if they take it. It's like available, but they're not hitting it yet. So that's not a good sign. Oftentimes they'll step up to it like that, and they have to back up once before you really actually see people. That 14 quarter in the 5 years, what I'm looking at, there's 27 contracts hitting there, but like not much more than that is hitting it. And that's probably what you need to start to see in order for the 10-year to go to a new low. Was someone spoofing 03? You know, I hadn't noticed that until you just said something. The 3,000 was added on the bid at 8:26:20, so about a minute and a half ago. So, I don't like to call it a spoof just because that pretends that like we know why it's there and that it won't pull. But there's a good chance that it is a spoof. But let's just call it a large order for now. Large order has appeared at 03 as we're getting that kind of pressure. But they're only just kind of barely nibbling at 14 quarter in the 5-year. So they still don't seem to be ready. In the 10-year, you get an iceberg sample size. Okay, that's interesting. So we ticked up and somebody decided to add one at 03 half as well. So originally you're looking at that and you're thinking that's like a target, and maybe they're showing that to try and entice people to come down to them. Now it ticks up, and now it makes you think, if it's a spoof, that they're trying to create buying pressure so that they can get their sells, you know? Yeah, that's what I think is it's a boost to try and get people to sell. That last tick up really makes me think that could be the case. And one of my heuristics that I use, and I don't really have a lot of strong evidence behind this. This is just kind of like my own logical thinking and experience, that the later in the session you are, the more likely that things like that are to be shenanigans. When you see that stuff at the beginning of the session, that's a big guy that's really anxious. Why would you do it at, 10:30 Eastern time? All of the biggest trades are already passed. Well, we're about to get natural gas here in a minute, but now they're both gone. And they pulled it at the same time. But not they just kind of randomly pulled, so I'm not quite sure what to make of that. Maybe he got filled. Maybe it's time to go short. If that's the trade, if the trade was he put those big bids in there to get fills, now that those are gone, that means that he got his fills and that we're going to go lower. Yeah. You don't have risk having 3,000 contracts filled rant. So there's a couple of things about it though, right? Like there's a lot of specifics that I think you have to look for in those situations. I think that you guys, you have been seeing this enough, you have the intuition for it. But for the newer people, what are some of the things that we can look for here? One of them is that what hadn't been around for very long, right? Was only there for a few minutes, and only after we had already came down. A second thing is that it was large orders. Like our market depth tape was showing it. Our market, I can't, I have to show you this over here. To pull it out over here. The market depth tape was showing them adding, like here's the stack on the bid, that 3,000 right there. And then the other one at 24.5, right? And then them pulling. And now they're putting it on the offer. So that shows you it's all one person. Because sometimes when you have, like a big order below us, there's actually like 3 or 4 large orders involved, and that's how it gets so big. And like each one of them is actually only 500 contracts, but all of them together, it adds up to that extra 3,000 or whatever that really makes that level stick out, right? So that's another kind of sign. And then the third sign, the one that I already talked about, it's pretty late in the session and not any kind of real clear market driver here. We did have the ECB press conference that I wasn't paying attention to, but I didn't see anything that was clearly causing the market to move. It does look to me like a lot of this movement is endogenous. So if this movement is endogenous and I'm getting those big orders out there, that means it's more likely to be a spoof. Well, they put a big order on the offer, but it looks like that big order on the offer now is kind of pulled as well. So yeah, is it really that big of a change into? Oh yeah, I guess over the length of the session it is. Yeah, it's a little deceptive because so much of that change happened on that first washout. Like that first washout. It's kind of funny because they only got like 2 to 4 ticks on it, but the amount of delta that came through on that was tremendous, wasn't it? But you're right, like you huge change in delta, and then they come down to the lows and they're just kind of sitting there nonchalant. That does kind of look like somebody trying to like, okay, so let's buy a little bit. Let's get people to buy a little bit. Stand in their way, take some fills, pull the rug out from underneath of them and see if they can hold it. But you're still not seeing that flow come through. I'm actually seeing cumulative delta still being consistently sell through this area, but you're not getting paid for it very much. That kind of says to me that like the meta orders sell are still active, but that for the time being, they don't see a reason to press it. They're getting enough liquidity to do what they need to do. Camouflage. The Harris policy dump, an incoherent mess put out under the guise of poll tested. Oh, you know, I'm interested in reading that because that's exactly what I thought when they put it out. It's like everything in here is just like poll tested milk toast stuff just to say that you have a platform. Okay, they stepped up to that one pretty quickly. That's still not enough to get people to sell O3, huh? There you go. Ah, and only 844 to do it too. That's Okay, what about O2? O2 half. That one pulls too. 1219. O2. So the issue that you're going to see here now, because they've done that, is now they are searching for the liquidity and they're not finding it, right? Like, are you going to see them clear one of these prices and there be like 3,000 or 4,000 contracts before, or they might just keep going. Okay, well, so they're coming up. There is an iceberg at O2 half, so there is an iceberg selling that is probably part of the drive. Sometimes if you get enough and the iceberg just fills, then it's over and the pressure is relieved, then it comes back. Okay. So I'm going to put my limit order out now. Three by three. Before we were getting 2 by 2, 2,000 on the bid, 2,000 on the offer. Now we're getting 3,000 on the bid, 3,000 on the offer. I think that there's going to be icebergs there too. Oh, no, never mind. Only 662 to trade up at 03. Okay. Well, that makes me a little bit nervous that I might have missed my optimal exit. $761. Okay, so this whole area is a low liquidity zone at the moment, which means that they can do this, go back and forth across it very quickly and easily. Not very optimal for entries. It's a huge problem for my exit. Well, I don't know. Like if I take 04, then all of that waiting for that drop was for nothing, right? Oh, ES started tanking. Oh, that's interesting. And you know, again, I'm not hearing anything from my news squad. I'm not seeing anything on Twitter. Well, the latest thing I've seen on Twitter is U.S. State Department imposes sanctions on suppliers to Pakistani's ballistic missile program in a statement. JBDI Holdings halted for the 4th time today. It sure is curious that we'll get these moves. It's like the Treasury starts to levitate and the S&P 500 is falling apart, and there's no clear reason why. That might have been an individual stock news. So if it's an individual stock, I'm usually, with my sources, don't pick those up very well. But if we're to go with the endogenous thing, I think that there was a large meta order sell. He had big icebergs going on. When his iceberg was filled at 0.2 that was the end of it. The pressure's off. So we already kind of missed our best opportunity to get out before that order was finished. Now we're stuck in the post meta order regime pullback. And it's a pretty illiquid zone in here. So I might be able to finagle something, but probably my best exit's past. Steve Cohen's .72 asset management is preparing to return some capital to investors for the first time. You know, that whole spoof, it was really interesting. We haven't had a move like that where it was really clear what was going on in a long time. And I'm surprised that and I don't think I can really take credit for it because you guys were really pointing it out before I said anything. But it does seem like our stream's collective intuition on this situation was correct. It wasn't worth a whole lot, but it does seem like our intuition was correct. Who was at yesterday's pit low and that test held, okay? Well, while the imbalance might be over, it looks like the flows aren't over because you still got icebergs on both sides at 0.3, half, 0.4. So do you notice when it ticks back up at 0.3 half that 3K is like almost immediately there? I'm curious what that's about because I'm not the Japanese yen lurched a little bit lower. Like the Japanese yen went lower and has stayed down, where the treasuries kind of went down and bounced back up. So it seems like that they're probably reacting to some correlation there, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it is with the S&P 500. I don't know. And I don't think it's with the dollar because there's nothing clearly happening in the dollar. And by the way, gold never really sold. I was saying, remember I said, okay, 2578, I think it was. We're a little bit higher than that now. So you did not get the sell-off in gold. And oil is kind of sideways today. Well, silver is up big. Silver is the biggest winner today at 2.65%. And UB is the biggest loser. Well, that's interesting. Why is UB the biggest loser? Because I don't see the yield curve steepening. Well, now this one is interesting because at 0.4, I am not really seeing necessarily strong signs of low latent liquidity. We have been stuck on that range for a long time. So literally cannot find anything that fueled that ES volume. It's got to be endogenous. I mean, it could be related. Like, it could be that these things are happening on this day because of that we had data and the ECB and everything else. But I'm not convinced that these moves are being created by like new positions. A lot of the flows that I'm seeing, really kind of course, we're guessing and trying to use context to guess, but my guesses are that, you know, it's like old positions getting washed out. Especially because, you know, you didn't really see the flow turn short until that first touch of the, like, look at the man. Like, the way that it honored these levels in the price inventory cost basis is insane. You have that one right there. You have that one right there. That one was like one tick short. But it literally, they went to the stop out zone, balanced back out, and then came down to the stop out zone again. And now we've been sitting at the stop out zone this whole time. So that kind of explains what's going on here, right? Is like, they do want to move lower, but they're not getting enough existing positions being washed out and having to sell in order to really get that stop run that they want. In other words, I think that we've washed out most of the buyers. Now, that doesn't mean, I guess that could be the recipe for, you know, a snap back to here, but it will still depend on the meta orders. Like, are there people meta orders selling and they still have more to sell? Unclear. Here we asked that question and it looks like they did. But I think that still kind of reinforces my greater opinion that I missed my best exit opportunity. In fact, I guess if I'm really, well, and I am really anxious about it because we've got like 10 minutes left, that I really should be trying to get it out at 04. So let's do that. ING Economics. We think that after some hesitation, the ECB will eventually have to cut rates more aggressively. Interesting. New poll suggests Jewish voters in swing districts have shifted away from Democrats. Boo, so I did get stopped out after all that. Well, that's very disappointing. I think that I did not manage the exit very well. You know, what was this? This originally started with Octavius saying, well, I would take 05. And I said, nah, I think that they're gonna come through. Well, I was right, but I didn't get paid for it. What should I have done? I should have, as soon as there was that back tick, I should have market out it. Should have hit on a market order out. That would have put me at, I think, 02 half 03. That would have been an okay exit. You know, I don't think I've ever seen it that close, though. Well, this was a situation that I can't recall ever, like, explicitly seeing in you know, where it was like a large portion of market participants clearly got washed out of the market. There was a pullback, and then they came and they went for another run. That to me is kind of like the sort of stuff that they do on a trend day, but they didn't do it this time. Like, they went down and they was like, oh, okay, that's everybody. All right, I guess we're gonna retrace a little bit higher then. Very interesting. But it also does that. Now, I'm really interested to see what you guys think about this one. Does the fact that we weren't able to go any lower and have now reversed a little bit, put that big spoof down there in its slightly different context, because one could say, okay, they're trying to force it lower, but another thing could say that, yeah, you're trying to force it lower, but then eventually you're gonna flip it around the other way. Because this was something when spoofs were a lot more common and I was paying attention and focusing on them a lot more, that was the sort of thing that would always kind of mess me up, is that, like, it would get spoofed one way, and then it would get spoofed the other way, and then it would get spoofed the other way, and you have no clue what it's actually going to do in the end. And you just kind of get thrashed around for nothing. That might have been at play there as well. What do you think? Do you think that that's correct, or do you think that it was just kind of coincidence? Somebody wanted to sell it, it broke, and then there wasn't enough, and that's why it reversed. I default to all the orders on the book being fake. Well, I'm not saying that they're not fake. I'm saying, was it a double fake? Was it a double fake, or was it a fake that didn't result in enough of a change, and when the market rebalanced, it resulted in a reversal? Because I'm kind of starting to think it was a double fake. Although I suppose if it was a double fake, should you get more upside than we're getting here? Because he gives the thoughtful faces. Not sure. This is the problem with the spoofs, though, right? Is like, okay, I'm gonna put a big bid there, and that's gonna cause people to buy it, and then I'm gonna get fills, and then I'm gonna drop it, and everybody realizes that they got caught, and not, as they sell, I take my fills and I made a few ticks, right? Like, that's the purest reflection of the spoof trade. So what happens? People start to figure that out. They all say, oh, there's a spoof there. That means we should sell into the spoof, right? And so then the guy that's doing the spoof, he starts to get that idea, and so he starts to be a little bit more sly. He starts to be like, okay, I'm going to quietly accumulate some shares short first, and then I'm going to put that big bid, and then when they start to test me and they hit into it, I'll just pull it and let it go down, and then I take the fills, right? Like, you can't win the game because there's too many different levels to it, and he has all the power, I mean, there's still a seller willing to pummel 6K into the bid at 05. Yeah, that's true. There was a 6K iceberg. Well, and you could read that as there was a large meta order buy that brought them up there, and that 6K was I got to tell you, this is something that I don't think I've talked about, but I'm starting to come around to this idea that you have a move, it's a relatively strong trend, and then let's say they were moving down. You're moving down, relatively strong trend, and then you get this iceberg down at the bottom on the offer. You get this iceberg down on the offer. And we typically read that as, okay, now that's like before she goes. They're filled there, now they're going to pull these bids and they're going to let it drop. But it can also be that there is somebody that just needed to sell a lot. They are getting a lot of fills on their iceberg, and once they're able to tick up through that iceberg, that means that guy is filled, and that's the end of the meta order, and so then that's why it pulls back a little bit after that. So could be that there was a little bit of a meta order selling. Well, let's say some manipulation to try and sell it, and then maybe somebody came in and bought it, and that was really brief, and that ended at 05, and now we're kind of back to 04 as kind of like the middle of the hole. That's what I think happened. Of course, we can never know for sure, but now there being that many people out there to sell still says that we have a good chance to go to the lows, doesn't it? But there's a good chance, but no real, like if I were to, what would be the word for this? Like, if we say something is a 50-50, okay? What is the probability that our prediction of the probability is good? That is, when we look at all of the situations and the effectiveness of the indicators that we have, how good of a measure is that? You know what I mean? Because I think, like, the possibility that it goes lower, pretty high, but the effectiveness of our ability to predict that it, accurately predict that it will or it will not is probably really low. It's just like the possibility of it happening because the conditions are good enough are there, but our ability to predict the future flows is not very good. Oh, actually, then a better way of putting it would be the market conditions are conducive towards it being able to go to a new low, but our ability to predict future flows is not very good. Because remember, we have to take current conditions and future flows in order to be able to make a good prediction. So if we have a really good read on the current conditions, but not a very good read on the future flows, and you might have the opposite sometimes. Sometimes you might know very, very clearly. Like, that's what I think it is. What right after news is like, right after news, you know very clearly like which way the orders are going to be going, but you don't really know what the market conditions are and which prices are going to hold and whatnot. Well, back to the lows though. So after them stopping me out, then they go and they do it, huh? Well, is there a lot of delta selling on it? There, maybe not. That looks like that the conditions are still pretty slick. Oh, so I guess it's just like what I was saying. Like, the conditions would make it able to go down, but do we know what the future flows are? Well, the flows ended up being sell. The flow ended up being sell. Maybe I would, could I still be in this? Like, what if I didn't have my stop? What if I had my stop at break even? Could I still be in this? I think maybe I would. No, I wouldn't, because it's time to end the stream. That's why I had it in there, huh? Well, that kind of sucks, but that's kind of par for the course, right? It's always like I'm waiting in a trade, and they don't really do the thing that I want them to do until I'm out. Either because they're able to scare and chase me out, or because I have to go and then right? That's okay. It was still a fun session. I think that there was some valuable stuff in there. So some interesting things to think about. Like, on one hand, there are some open questions there. And I think it's important to keep those open questions so that in our minds, we don't explicitly, start hard coding something into there that's not completely correct, right? But I think that there was still a lot of connections to be made in there, and that watching that action was valuable. So yeah, story of our lives. Isn't? I mean, listen. I was reading this thread on Reddit. They were like, if you don't beat the S&P 500, then what's the point in trading? Well, not everybody's financial goals are the same. But like, once you start to get into that, and you look at that, the vast majority of retail day traders don't just underperform the index, but outright lose all of their money. The only conclusion you can make on that is that if you're going to do this, you have to have incentives for it beyond just monetary, right? So somebody has to do it, and we're going to get toyed around with a lot, but I still enjoy it. So, and watching that breakdown, I don't know, that wasn't like the greatest stop run of our lives or anything, but watching it push lower was kind of fun. There's a big order there at 03, by the way, now too. So I get it going. I will leave you guys to it. Till tomorrow, stay excellent, team.